This is Robert Kraft, and I'm your host on SNN.Network. And joining me right now is Keith Phillips. He is the president and CEO of Piedmont Lithium. It's a publicly traded company. I got two symbols for you, PLL on both the NASDAQ and ASX. Keith, thank you for joining me today. How you doing?
I'm doing great, Robert. Thanks for having me on. Happy to do this.
It's great to have you. And look, especially with the news that just came out on Monday, I know you're very busy right now. So, I appreciate you taking the time. Speaking of which, it's been about a year since we had you on to talk about Piedmont Lithium and tell us the whole story, and while I'd love to kind of go through a full update since then, I think everyone watching or listening right now wants to hear a little bit more about that news that you announced this week. So just to remind everybody, on Monday, the company announced that it has signed a sales agreement with Tesla. So Keith, can you elaborate a little bit more on this news and what this means for Piedmont moving forward?
Sure. So we're obviously very happy. So I think I was in California last week for Tesla's Battery Day. I was very happy to be invited. It was an interesting event. And I think the key takeaways from that event are, number one, Tesla has, they have a fantastic track record. I drive a Tesla Model 3. It's the best car I've ever driven. They obviously have a lot of satisfied customers. Without even advertising, they become the biggest seller of luxury sports sedans in the United States, and they're going to be growing in other areas. So what they really messaged is their growth plans are quite ambitious. They expect to grow dramatically over the next decade and beyond, which means they expect to need a lot of batteries and they expect to need a lot of lithium. And they fundamentally messaged a requirement for lithium for themselves alone that would be 6 or 7 times more than the entire world will produce this year by 2030. And for lithium hydroxide, so right now they have lithium hydroxide and lithium carbonate. Carbonate is probably 65% of the market. Hydroxide maybe is 35. You need hydroxide in longer range batteries, higher nickel cathode batteries, which Tesla uses for the most part. So for hydroxide demand, Tesla is essentially messaging they'll need 15 to 20 times more hydroxide by 2030 than the entire world will produce this year. Massive demand growth. So it was a little opaque, but it's clear they're going to bring a little of their own hydroxide capacity in-house. They need a supplier of spodumene concentrate. We happen to be a prospective producer of spodumene concentrate. We're the only one in the United States. We developed a relationship. We've had a relationship for some time focused on selling them hydroxide. But we've agreed we'll supply them some spodumene concentrate for an initial 5-year period, starting in 2022 to 2023, date to be determined. And we're very excited about it, and obviously excited to partner with them. They're the world's biggest electric vehicle company. They're American. Our project's American. It's a happy outcome.
Absolutely, and congratulations. I mean,
Thank you.
This is a big deal, So
thank you.
I wanted to touch on what you just said at the end there, when you're looking ahead about, when you hope to then serve this demand, of course, and actually put out some of those deliverables that you're saying. So, as it states in the agreement, and I quote here, it is conditional upon Tesla and Piedmont agreeing to a start date for spodumene. Did I say that right? Spodumene?
It's spodumene.
Spodumene.
Yeah.
Clearly, I know so much about lithium already. Everybody watching. Spodumene concentrate deliveries between July 2022 and July 2023, based on the development schedules of both parties, end quote. So what needs to happen in order to make sure the company starts delivering material within this time frame? Of course, from what you can tell us.
So the time frame, it's really as simple as that. It's really depending on both companies' development schedules. So we can meet the July 2022 timeline. We have some certain things we need to do. We're doing them. We're confident we'll get them all accomplished. So that's really a sensible start date from our perspective. I mean, maybe we can move it up a little bit, but that works for them. Tesla is evaluating. I think they're refining their own plans for their own capacity, and I think it's not. That may or may not be ready by July 2022. So they'll know soon enough. And once they know, and once once they know, we'll put the pin in on what the actual delivery date will be. It'll be sometime between kind of summer 2022, summer 2023. On our side, what we need to do, we received the only federal permit we need for a mining concentrate plant last November. Huge catalyst. The market pretty much yawned, as it did about a lot of lithium news last year, but a very important catalyst. That's behind us. So we've got some local permitting to do, which is typical. North Carolina, I would say, is a very important mining state. It's the number 7 mining state in the USA. A lot of industrial minerals activity, aggregate activity. So we feel good about that process. We have to complete a definitive feasibility study. We have to do some infill drilling to upgrade our resources to reserves, et cetera. That's all going to happen over the next 6 to 9 months. It's in process, and it's within our control. So we feel really good about it. We don't have any question about our ability to deliver or their desire to take the material. So that's the plan. Now, I will say, until we were, we've known Tesla for some time, but the discussion of a spodumene concentrate is relatively new in the last 2+ months, because initially our plan was to use all of our own concentrate to put in our own chemical plant to produce lithium hydroxide to sell to people like Tesla, other car and battery companies. We're still going to do that. We're still going to build that chemical plant. Given that we're going to take some of our concentrate and sell that to Tesla, we'll be looking for a third-party supplier to replace that and maybe even grow beyond. So we intend to build a very big business here in North Carolina.
It's pretty interesting. So they did the deal, before, you guys actually went to reserves or reported reserves. So, because just to catch everybody up on the junior mining space in general, whether it's gold or any kind of commodities, there's the inferred reserves there's the inferred resource, and then you have the actual reserves, which is documented in the PEA. So what was that negotiation like? What did they must have saw something prior to then this PEA that you guys it sounds like are looking to put together right now.
Yeah, so the scoping study, as we call it, is the PEA equivalent. So the scoping study was published initially in September 2018. We updated it last year. I think we've updated it twice actually now. We've done a pre-feasibility study on our chemical plant, I would say, and the engineering work and the metallurgy work in our scoping study is done to a pre-feasibility standard already. We just hadn't done all the infill drilling. The pegmatite dikes we're targeting in North Carolina are very continuous. So we have a very high degree of confidence that our infill drilling will convert all of our resources to reserves. If there's one area where things don't work out quite the way we planned, we're confident there'll be other areas where we have a pleasant surprise. So I don't think anybody, frankly, in the geology world has a lot of question about our ability to convert the resources to reserves. We don't. We'll begin that process shortly. And we're lucky. We're in a very prolific mineral belt. So again, spodumene is the main mineral that people extract for lithium purposes. And we're on the only spodumene belt in the United States. There are similar belts in Canada, Australia, parts of Africa, Europe, South America. This is the only one in the USA of any scale. We're the biggest landowner on that belt. We frankly expect to make our resources meaningfully larger over time with addition. We'll need to maybe get more land. We'll need to do more drilling, and we're doing that. But we think the resources will get bigger from here.
Very good. So actually, this touches on my next question, and you addressed this earlier about how you're the only U.S. Developer really of a lithium project right now. And from what you just said, it makes a lot of sense in that there's only one vein of scale of spodumene, and that's in North Carolina. So, just kind of giving a whole picture here for those unfamiliar with lithium extraction and mine development especially in the United States, can you go a little bit deeper into an overview of what that looks like, and then also the competitive landscape and how your land package compares to some of the other lithium land packages out there?
So I guess I'll say a few things. So with respect to our package, so we're on private land in North Carolina, very different from most mining activity. So if you think about northern Quebec or Nevada, where there is, in northern Quebec, there's a lot of spodumene, northern Ontario, the same. In Nevada, there's some brine and clay projects. and some others, Western Australia, mostly spodumene. Again, that's all on public land. So it's on land that someone stakes online on a computer. They achieve a big, they develop a big acreage position, essentially. They go drill it, and ultimately they pay royalties to the state for the right to mine that property. And they generally say 5% royalties right off the top from a revenue perspective. East of the Mississippi in the U.S., most of the land is private. It's owned by individuals, families, and they own. And in North Carolina, if you own an acre, you own the minerals all the way to the core of the earth, underneath your ground. So what happened in the coal business, what happens in a lot of industrial mineral activity, aggregate activity, lithium activity east of the Mississippi, in a place like North Carolina, when we acquire land, we own the mineral rights, and we don't have any royalties other than if we have a royalty to the seller of the land. There are no state mining royalties. So it's a huge advantage. We have the capital cost of buying the land up front, but we save that 5% off the top royalty going forward. Big, big advantage. So that's one thing that differentiates ours. The process itself is pretty straightforward. It's we consider it quarrying activity. So there are quarries all over the world. Any place, I'm not sure where you're based, Robert, but any place, certainly in Charlotte, which is the second fastest growing city in the United States, there are quarries all over the place. You can't build a highway system or a residential development or a shopping mall without aggregate and asphalt, and you need to quarry that material, obviously. So our process will be very similar. It'll be open pit. It's a relatively small footprint. We have a high-grade deposit. There's no cyanide leaching. There's no tailings dams. There's none of that. None of the stuff people would worry about in a more invasive mining process. So because of that, I think we've been welcomed into the community.
It's so fascinating when you think, look, we've known you for, a few years now. We just did our last interview a year ago. It's not like companies like Tesla and the EV, I guess, explosion has been something that's been under wraps by any means. So why now? Why is it now that, lithium companies, and especially, like a Piedmont Lithium, are starting to gain this kind of notice, not just because of the Tesla deal, but just in general, because this has been the worst kept secret in the markets for a couple of years now, So what's your macro view on that?
Great question. So we've been spending a lot of time for 2+ years interacting with car companies, battery companies, cathode companies, others. And it's been obvious in all our meetings that some of the sharper groups have been aware for some time that a crunch is going to come. I mean, if you go to Korea and meet with battery companies, which we did 4 times last year, and they're big battery companies over there, they individually have contracts booked in 2023 that will require more lithium hydroxide than the entire world will produce this year. I mean, they're committed in 2023 to supply big car companies. And that's happening at the same time that until recently, there hasn't been a single upstream lithium asset being developed on the planet over the last year. So there's one being built, Lithium Americas, which is a NYSE company, TSX company. They're a joint owner with Ganfeng of a large brine project in Argentina. So that's back under construction now. It's the only upstream project of any scale being built in the world right now. It's a big problem. I think Tesla, candidly, is ahead of the curve as normal. They're cognizant of the fact that they're not having any trouble selling cars. If they can produce a car, they can sell it. They don't advertise. They don't have a lot of inventory. They produce it, they sell it. And that's true increasingly around the world. And that'll be true with the Cybertruck and the Semi and all the new vehicles that come. And they're smart people, and they realize that they can't produce cars if they don't have batteries, and they can't have batteries if they don't have lithium. The same will go for some other materials. Elon Musk had talked about nickel. So I think part of this is just, they've come to this realization that this is really important to lock up some supply. Fortunately, they came to us, which is great, but I think the whole industry benefits, and others will come to this realization. So if you imagine you're an auto company in Detroit or Munich or some other part of the world, or a battery company in Tokyo or Seoul or Europe, you got to be facing this reality that EV demand is going through the roof, just happening. Again, I drive a Tesla. These are better cars. They're cheaper to operate, far cheaper to operate. They're smoother, quieter, faster. They're becoming cheaper to buy as battery costs fallen 87% in the last decade. So we're pretty soon going to be at the point where whether you walk in and you want to buy a Ford F-150 or a Toyota Corolla, there's going to be a shiny electric version right beside the one you're thinking about buying. It's going to be cheaper to buy, cheaper to operate, way cooler. Nobody's going to want the internal combustion vehicle. Literally nobody. Demand will go vertical, and that's not far away. That's happening in the next 2 or 3 or 4 years. It's only a question of whether the car companies can produce the cars and put them on the showroom floor. They need batteries for that. They need lithium for the batteries. It's VW describes it as the irreplaceable element. You cannot make a lithium-ion battery without lithium. You can make it without nickel. You can make it without cobalt. You might not want to, but you can. You can't make it without lithium. So I think there's going to be a feeding frenzy. I think you're going to see car companies and battery companies and cathode companies kind of come to the realization they need to lock up supply somehow. One thing I should add, we're obviously in North Carolina. 83% of the world's lithium hydroxide comes from China. That's great. The Chinese are very smart, sophisticated, good producers, but everybody wants diverse sources of supply. Anybody that can produce hydroxide from outside of China is going to have a huge advantage. And we just have an amazingly bullish outlook on the next couple of years after what have been a couple difficult years in lithium.
I mean, one last question, looking at the lithium industry as a whole, I mean, are there a lot of well-known, I guess, lithium land packages out there that are producing hydroxide right now? Or is it very much at, now we're going to see a lot of, listen, we cover the junior mining space quite a bit. So are we now going to be seeing a lot of junior mining companies popping up saying, oh, we have we have stakes in this part of the world that might have, some sort of grade of lithium, but, we're just trying to service the lithium demand right now. I mean, should we be expecting that now?
So I would say yes and yes. So the second question is pretty easy. For sure, there will be smart entrepreneurs from Canada and Australia and other parts of the world who take a fresh look at lithium as the market recovers, as it is and will. There are a number of existing projects. We did have a lithium bull market 2015 to 17, 18.
Yeah.
So there are a number of projects out there. I think a number of them are viable. I personally think a number of them are not viable. I would break them down into 3 basic categories: spodumene projects, spodumene or other hard rock projects, brine projects, mostly in Argentina, and non-traditional projects, clay in Nevada, direct lithium extraction in other parts of the world. Projects that are very interesting and in some cases have fantastic teams working on them, but have never been done commercially before. I'm a skeptic of anything that's never been done commercially before. Personally, it's just my bias based on my experience. So, but there are a number of, what the market lacks is there aren't many integrated projects like ours. So there are a lot of Western Australia spodumene projects, Quebec spodumene projects, Ontario spodumene projects, African, Brazilian, European. There aren't many that have credible forward integration plans. We intend to produce spodumene concentrate and convert it to lithium hydroxide. We'll sell some concentrate to Tesla. Most of our concentrate will go to our plant, and we'll buy more concentrate from others to produce hydroxide and more hydroxide. That's a scalable business. Hydroxide, spodumene is something we can buy from 5 different continents going forward over the next several years. The option for the producer of concentrate is to sell it to the Chinese or sell it to someone like us. There aren't many people like us, so we're 200 miles from ports in Charleston and Wilmington. Very attractive, big market, surrounded by car companies. Great place to ship material. So we think we can build a really large business. That's hard. That will be hard for others to replicate. There's a lot of human capital involved. Location matters a great deal, et cetera. And having our own mineral resources, the foundation of that, is something that is hard to do. And if you have a mineral resource, say in northern Quebec, you may have a great mining opportunity. It's not a great place to build a chemical plant from a personal perspective or logistics perspective. So we'll see. I mean, I think for those that have quality assets, and there are several, it's going to be a really fun decade, the 2020s. That includes us. We're excited, and there may be some new entrants. I wouldn't be surprised if there's some new discoveries. You think about Tesla themselves needing 10 or 15 or 20 times more hydroxide than the world produces today. We need to have some new discoveries. So I hope there will be some. I hope we make some of them, and we'll be looking to do that.
Very good. Well, final question here, from what you can tell us, what's the 1 to 2 things that investors should look for from Piedmont moving forward?
So we're moving into execution mode. So we've been an exploration company / early stage development. We now have a 12-month window to get our mining concentrate plant up and running. We're going to build our chemical plant along the same timeline. So there's a lot to do. We'll be doing a lot of drilling to expand resources and prove up reserves. We'll be permitting the properties. We'll be completing some met test work that is underway. We'll be building our team. We'll undoubtedly be signing additional agreements with people like Tesla. They may not have quite as much cachet in the public equity markets, but there are a lot of big car companies, big battery companies that we hope to sign up with.
And Keith, where can our audience go and find everything they need to know about the Piedmont Lithium story?
PiedmontLithium.com. So www.piedmont.com. And we trade on NASDAQ and the ASX under the ticker PLL. And happy to talk to any shareholders who want to reach out to me at any time. So thanks for having me on.
It's great to have you. Thank you, Keith. Really appreciate it. And good luck. Stay safe. All right.
Thanks a lot. You too. Bye now.